Hey folks, welcome back. Today we are talking about the divorce landscape. And in fact, there's two different episodes. One is going to be today, where I talk about the outer journey. So, what that practical roadmap of divorce looks like. And the next episode will be on the inner journey and what the emotional mindset behavior piece looks like. And so today we're going to start with the outer journey. Starting it off, of course, is that excruciating phase of being on the mend or end fence, or being the person who's surprised and told, which I'll get to in just a minute. And so I spent years, and so many of my clients have spent years, some of them decades, on the mend or end fence. And we often think that we're confused and uncertain. And some people are, but many people are more afraid and afraid of the unknown. And so deciding whether or not to get off the mender end fence is something that we talk about. You'll find some resources on the jbddivorcesupport.com website to help you along the way. What you want to do when you're on the mender end fence is to start working on yourself. You want to start noticing where are all the places where I struggle and just what's my part in it. And let me stop trying to get my husband or my wife to change. Let me leave them to their side of the street and let me focus on me. And I guarantee when you start doing that, and especially if you enlist the support of a coach like one of the Journey Beyond Divorce coaches, you will get crystal clear on what you've brought to the table, the part you're playing in the problems in the marriage. And as you heal and refine that part of the relationship, your spouse is either going to dance closer to you or further away, and your clarity will come. So that's the mender and fence. If you, on the other hand, are going about life and all of a sudden your spouse, seemingly out of the blue, drops the bomb that they want a divorce, that they have a lover, that they're moving out, that is an excruciating awareness to be invited into. And there is a visceral reaction, and you will absolutely be in those early stages of denial and depression and anger. And so for you, while this episode is about the external journey, I highly recommend that if that is you, you immediately dive into all of the articles on our website and the podcasts around grief, because more than anything, what you need is some time to process and let your nervous system settle down before you can do anything else. So that is stepping off of the mender end fence and into the divorce journey. And so what is that first phase? I like to refer to the first stage as preparing your head, heart, and home. So many people want to run out, hire an attorney, and start the process, but they don't know what they're starting. They don't know what kind of an attorney. They don't even realize that there are different approaches. So we're going to start at the beginning. When you have either been told or you've decided to divorce, the first thing you want to do is shore up home. And so what does that look like? That looks like, what do I need to know? What am I afraid of? And if your spouse has been telling you all of these terrible things that will happen, one of the first things you want to do is begin to learn your legal rights. And so as you explore, and there are so many resources on the internet, and certainly at Journey Beyond Divorce, just go to our blog post, search law, legal rights, divorce attorney, and you will have plenty of articles that will begin to give you information about how do you figure out what your legal rights are. And I'll tell you right off the bat, there are 5 buckets in divorce. There is child custody, which is both shared parenting time and shared decision making. Those are 2 of the buckets: child custody, under custody, shared parenting time, shared decision making. And then financial distribution. Under that is child support, 1 type of financial support. Spousal support is another, and then the distribution of marital assets and debts. And so those are your three buckets: child support, spousal support, distribution. And so that's the whole bucket. Understanding your legal rights within those buckets is absolutely important. Do not listen to what your sister or your mother or your guy friend or your girlfriend tell you is going to happen. Every single divorce is different. And if you have a high conflict divorce, it's going to be very different than a garden variety divorce. And if you have adult children and it's a silver divorce, it's very different than if you have a divorce with grade school children. Speak to an expert. So in order to get your legal rights, you want to speak to a matrimonial attorney, not any attorney, a matrimonial attorney. This is an attorney that practices family law. And that's everything from prenuptials and postnuptials to custody issues to filing and processing a divorce case. They will be able to tell you in your state, in your jurisdiction, based on your circumstances, what you can expect. That is a really important conversation to have. Now, before you go and hire an attorney, there are numerous different approaches to divorce. So don't be so quick to hire. I'm going to get to that in a minute, but we're still in the head, home, and heart part. And so the head is knowing your legal rights so that you stop listening to the catastrophic stories you're being told and you start listening to a professional who, without emotion, can just give you the facts, not the fiction, which your spouse is giving you, just the facts. And then your heart, you want to start noticing how dysregulated you are or when you get dysregulated. And so when you go from 0 to 100 in a hot second, you're having a severe visceral reaction. There's going to be a lot of emotion throughout this entire journey. You want to get clear on: where am I afraid? What are the stories I'm telling myself? What don't I know that I'm filling in fiction with? And where can I go to get my questions answered? I hope you come to the Journey Beyond Divorce podcast and the JBD Divorce Support website for that. And then you're home. There's a number of things that are going to happen. Once the decision has been spoken, are you going to continue to live in the same bedroom with your spouse? Is there someplace else that one of you can sleep? Is there an attic, a basement, a guest room, a kid's room, a couch? And so the first thing is, how am I changing the way we live in the house together? The second thing is common living areas: the living room, the kitchen, the playroom. What are the new rules and boundaries around common living areas? And then there are the chores. Am I going to still cook and clean and do laundry for everyone, or does that begin to change? And then there's the time with the children. How are we going to set boundaries and agreements for the common living areas, and who's with the kids when? And finally, you want to start thinking about temporary shared parenting. It's probably the hardest part of this early stage. There's incredible amounts of value in starting temporary shared parenting early so that your fears and their fears, your demands and their demands, are then practiced, and we get to see what's real and what's true, so that you can diminish your fear stories and so that you can learn a lot, whether you're the stay-at-home or the primary parent or the primary earner who's now wanting more time. Everybody gets to experience, how is this going to work? And is what I want realistic? Absolutely essential. So once you've done that, you've got your head, heart, and home, you've begun to have some semblance of order and some plans and some agreements. Now you're ready to step into stage 2. And stage 2 is assembling your team. And so who do you need? Of course, everyone thinks, well, if I'm getting a divorce, I need an attorney. You do not want a generalist, and you do not necessarily want to hire the attorney that your friend or family member hired. You want to understand that there are numerous paths through divorce. And so For the purposes today, I'm going to say there are three. You can litigate, which means that you're going through the court. It doesn't mean you're going to trial. It means you're going through the court system. I'll get to that in a minute. You can collaborate, which means that you're going through a big C collaborative process. You're hiring a collaborative attorney, your spouse is hiring a collaborative attorney. And I'll talk about that in a minute. And then the third one is mediation. And mediation can happen in one of two ways. But mediation is there's a neutral mediator, and you and your spouse are coming to agreements. So I'm going to start with mediation. Mediation people often pick because they feel like they're going to save money. It doesn't always save money. And the biggest thing with mediation is to ask this one question. Is there a power imbalance between me and my spouse? If there is a significant power imbalance, if you have been diminished, belittled, blamed, judged, put down, if you feel like, I used to say I felt like a shell of my former self, if you don't feel like you can go toe to toe with your spouse, mediation might not be best for you. The one time it is what I will refer to as facilitated mediation. That's where you and your attorney and they and their attorney meet together, and you can be in separate Zoom rooms or separate physical rooms. And so you're not alone. The mediator is still neutral, but you have your attorney with you. That is a much better option if there's any power imbalance or if there's any lack of transparency. Significant lack of transparency, significant lack of flexibility and willingness to collaborate and compromise voids mediation. So if you do not have a spouse who can be, or if you cannot be collaborative, flexible, transparent, mediation is absolutely not for you. So mediation, collaboration, I'm going to say, is in the middle. Collaboration is I have my attorney, you have your attorney, and we do a four-way. We sit around a table and we have other neutral experts that we can invite in. There can be a financial neutral who goes through all the finances with both of us and helps us come up with possible proposals. There can be an emotional neutral, which is actually called a divorce coach, but they're mental health experts who act as emotional mediators at the table and help to calm things. Many clients will work with me as a divorce coach one-on-one with them outside of collaboration, and then they have a divorce coach that's a neutral with their spouse in the collaborative process. There can be some other experts that come in depending on the complexities. But the main thing is collaboration is you and your attorney, them and their attorney, and the agreement is we will not go to court. And that is a really important agreement because it does have both people committing to being flexible and transparent and really working hard to make the collaborative process work. There is no escape hatch. In fact, if you want to go from collaborative to court, you literally need all new attorneys. The people you've been working with cannot support you in litigation. And so that's a really solid way to have a strong commitment to make the process work. Litigation is often, it can be the most contentious. Most people who use the court system are there because the court is like a divorce cop. It's like a traffic cop. It keeps things moving. The judge makes sure that everything keeps heading in the right direction. And let me tell you, moving can look like a standstill, and still divorce court will be better. So if you have someone who's truly not transparent, where you're not getting the financial documents you need, where where everything is a problem, where they're not flexible or compromising on anything, you probably will end up in divorce court. And that means you're hiring a litigating attorney. So you're hiring a litigating attorney for divorce court. You're hiring a collaborative attorney for the collaborative process. You're hiring a mediator who may or may not be an attorney. I highly recommend you use someone who is in the mediation process. And so until you know what process you want to use, you go out and hire an attorney, and now you've made a decision without even knowing you've made it. So first learn more. That was just a quick 101. We have a podcast on each of those approaches to divorce. So you want to dive into a full episode on the approach to divorce, make sure that that's what you want. And then you can go out and you can vet an attorney based on the approach that you want. And then how do you vet an attorney? What are the questions you want to ask? What information do you want to bring? And what do you want to look for while you're on that call or in their office? For instance, if everything's a hot mess and there's papers everywhere and they're telling you stories about other clients and they're not really hearing or listening to you or answering you the way you need, all of those would be big red flags. And at the same time, if it's very organized, if you feel heard, if they're spending plenty of time with you, if they're answering a question 2 or 3 times until you really feel comfortable, that's a really good sign. And so we have, again, episodes on how to vet and hire an attorney. And you don't want to just look at the retainer. You want to look at what the hourly rate is. You want to see what their associates charge. You want to make sure that they understand your circumstances, especially those in high conflict. If you feel poo-pooed, oh yeah, everybody's divorcing a high conflict person, that's a red flag for you. You want to make sure that they hear you, see you, that you're not having the same experience with your attorney as you're having with your soon-to-be ex at home. And so assembling your team is step 2. Part of assembling your team is also bringing on not just an attorney, but a divorce coach, like someone on Journey Beyond Divorce. A lot of people will hire a therapist, and therapists are incredibly helpful during this process in order to understand how you got to where you are, in order to connect the dots between your family of origin and your now family and the similar dynamics you're experiencing, and to heal the past and to have that psychological understanding. What therapists aren't as good at is the day-to-day. I know all of this stuff, but I'm still stepping into the same space with my soon-to-be ex, and we're having the same emotional blow-ups, and we're having the same patterns over and over again. That's where divorce coaching comes in incredibly well. We understand the external, that outer journey and everything you're going to go through, but we also are able to help you figure out your temporary shared parenting and what's triggering you and what's realistic and what's not, or how to live under the same roof with your spouse without it being World War III, and how to set boundaries and how to pay attention to your own communication. And so there's so much nuance in the emotional journey that a divorce coach can bring to the table that many therapists cannot. And so you may want to have both. A lot of my clients will have a hybrid where they coach with me a couple of times a month, they do therapy a couple of times a month, and they have it all covered. So you really want to take into consideration what you need there. And then there's the financial piece. The one tell I always tell, and as a coach, I rarely tell, is you want to have a financial expert. Divorce is about custody and finances. You want to have a financial expert. And so a CDFA is a certified divorce financial analyst. You may have a good relationship with your CPA. There may be a financial planner that you're working with. You definitely want to, and especially if you're not the moneyed spouse or you haven't been managing the finances, the budget, the investment, you absolutely want to have a financial expert who feels uber comfortable with numbers, because you're about to negotiate finances for the rest of your life and your children's lives. This is not a place you want to shortcut. This is not a place you want to stick your head in the sand. It is vitally important that you engage with the numbers, that you understand them, and that you are able to make wise choices. And between your divorce coach helping you regulate your emotions and your financial expert helping you understand the numbers, you are well on your way to success. And there's a lot of discovery in this. Assemble your team and kind of chart your course. You're gathering all of the financial documentation that you need. And that is typically you're looking at 3 years of tax returns, mortgage statements, credit card statements, bank statements, leases, loans, everything you owe, everything you earn, everything you have. and you want to look at everything you need. You're going to want to be putting together a budget for your future, which is a little bit hard, but it's a very good practice. That's a whole lot. That brings us into stage three. So now you've got your attorney, you've got your divorce coach, you've got your financial expert, and you may have some others. For me, going through my divorce, custody was a huge battle. We ended up needing an attorney for the children. And we ended up hiring a custody evaluator to evaluate me and dad psychologically to determine what was best for the children. If you go into court and you and your spouse are not on the same page with what's best for your children for custody, the court may very well appoint a custody evaluator and an attorney for the children, which is called a GAL, a guardian ad litem. And those are two more bills that you're going to be paying. So these are all resources available for you. I certainly felt like I was spending what I didn't have, but what I realized was I was investing in what I needed. And so that's another thing that we'll talk about in the next episode on the internal journey, but there are a lot of expenses, and having a mindset of investing in your future rather than this wasting spending, because divorce costs money. It's a big transition. You want to do it well, and you want to land solidly on the other side. So now we enter stage three, which is the negotiations. This is where, if you've worked with a really good coach, you are now feeling pretty emotionally regulated. You're noticing your tells, you know what triggers you, you've done a lot of work to get here. You know your finances, you're working with your financial person, you've got a good relationship with your attorney, and now the rubber meets the road. Now we're starting to talk about the fine tuning that custody schedule. We're starting to look at the debt and the assets and who's going to get what. And we're starting to look at how many children are there and what are their ages and how old is the primary earner and what does child support or spousal support look like if there is such a thing. And if somebody, and then there's the house. Are you keeping the house? Are you buying them out? Are they buying you out? Are you selling it? And then where are you going? And so I can imagine, even as I'm speaking, that your head is beginning to spin. So there's a lot of opportunity to think about all of these decisions throughout the process. And at this point in the negotiation, you could be 6 months or 2 years into the process. And so none of this stuff happens fast. I'm going to say that again. None of this happens fast. Divorce moves at a snail's pace. Even in there are a few states where it does move fast, but the vast majority, and certainly if you're in the high conflict realm, it is a slow journey. You have time. A lot of what we talk to our clients about is first things first. So they're thinking about the house when they really should be thinking about whether or not to move out of the master bedroom. When you get to negotiations, you're negotiating the house, you're negotiating your finances, you're negotiating the kids. If the kids are very young, you want to be thinking about middle school, high school, graduation, college funds. You have to think long term. You negotiate once, and so you want to have all of your ducks in a row, which is one of the things where you're provided when you're working with a coach is what comes next, what's the thing you need to be thinking about next. Going through the negotiations, this is where, if your paperwork is in order, if you've have a good relationship with your attorney is the legal expert and the negotiation expert. This is where you should feel like so supported. If you don't, that's a red flag. But at this point, they should be leading the way, telling you what their game plan is, telling you what they're thinking. And it's this very collaborative process. The more emotionally regulated you are, the more educated you are, the more effective you're going to be at partnering with your attorney at this point in the journey to ensure that you have a settlement that you feel really good about. There's no succeeding in divorce, and there's no winning really because it's divorce. Yet you can go through your divorce with grace and dignity. You can end up with an agreement that, if everyone's a little happy, it's probably the most successful agreement, so that nobody loses big time and nobody wins everything. That's the best possible outcome for a divorce. So you've negotiated everything, signed, sealed, and delivered, and then we enter phase 4. The fourth stage of divorce is moving on, embracing life after divorce. And this is both a relief. I'm stepping off of the battlefield. I'm dropping my armor. I'm letting go of my sword. Not so easy. My divorce was 3.5 years. It was a season for me to step off of the battlefield. And so that's something you really want to think about. The faster you can pivot, the better. The decisions are made. There's nothing left to fight over. Yes, you will most likely still be co-parenting with this person, depending on the age of your kids, for a little or a long time. And even that dynamic should be different. And so our moving on section is really about how much work have I done? How much do I have left to do? We'll talk about that more in the inner journey. And then the outer journey is, have I taken care of all of my paperwork? Have I made sure that my ex is no longer the beneficiary, is no longer on my health proxy, is no longer has my power of attorney? Do I have everything set up so that my children and I are set single and separate from the other parent? And am I ready to pivot from an intimate relationship with my ex, filled with emotion and judgment, to a business approach to co parenting? And am I clear on whether or not I will be co parenting or parallel parenting, which is just a lot less collaborative? And parallel parenting is vitally necessary if there's a lot of contention and if anyone on either side of the aisle wants to control the other one, you're best off with parallel parenting. And that's part of what you want to know in the negotiation process so that you negotiate a rock solid, ironclad, shall I say, parallel parenting agreement. And so now you're co-parenting and you want to live free and different. And so if you find yourself in the same dance with your ex that you were in when you were married, then that is work that you still have to do. That's why we continue to coach people post-divorce, because sometimes it's not until you get off the battlefield that you're really able to let go of thoughts, feelings, and behaviors that don't serve you. And so moving on post-divorce, it's an opportunity for you when you're not with the kids to dive into interests and hobbies and a social life and to find yourself again and to start loving yourself again and to rebuild. You might be rebuilding your career. You might be ready to dip your toe in the dating pool and see what that's like, or just go out with a posse of girls and start doing some, or guys, and doing some socializing and embracing life after divorce. Embracing is the key word here. And that's what the fourth stage is about. And so as I wrap this up, again, the quick bird's eye view is you're on the fence. You step off of the fence, or you're told that your spouse wants a divorce. Stage 1, get your head, heart, and home in order. Learn your legal rights. Stage 2, start looking at the key players that you want on your team, finding the right legal approach, hiring and retaining the right attorney, engaging a divorce coach, engaging a therapist if necessary, engaging a financial expert to help you with the financial piece. And then I would encourage you to engage in resources like our articles and podcasts on a regular basis, where you're just learning as you go through the process, so that when you get to the negotiation, you're ready for it. You know what your non-negotiables are. You know what your must-haves are. But you trust your team that's negotiating on your behalf. You know how you're triggered by your spouse, so you're not letting that get to you, and you're prepared for those negotiations. And then you're stepping into life after divorce, excited about the next chapter of your life. And we have, I think, 40 episodes, Voices of Celebration episodes of former Journey Beyond Divorce clients who entered divorce resistant, scared, thinking it's the worst thing in the world that would happen to them. And then they come on and they share their story of their journey of transformation and how excited they are about the next chapter of their life and how much they've grown through the process. That is what I wish for you. And so tune into the next episode as well, which is about the inner journey. And we have all types of support for you this coming year. And so If you are yearning for support, go to rapidreliefcall.com and book a call. We've got groups, we've got half a dozen coaches ready to support you, and we are a powerful stand for you and your future, and we're ready to support you. See you soon. Thanks for joining us on the Journey Beyond Divorce podcast. I hope you found guidance and encouragement to help you along your journey. If you like my podcast, please take a minute to subscribe and leave a review on iTunes. You can also visit us at jbddivorcesupport.com, where our team of coaches support both men and women through our one-on-one coaching, group programs, online courses, and free resources. Stay tuned for our next episode, and I'll talk to you soon.